While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog.
What's up, guys? It's Dr. Tim Jackson with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. Humor. We talk about it a lot, how important it is for the vagus nerve, for our parasympathetic nervous system. So I brought in one of the funniest people I've ever encountered in my life, Mr. Evan Slaughter, aka Fit2Serve on Instagram. Welcome to the show, Evan.
Man, I appreciate you having me on, Dr. Tim. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with Fit2Serve, and when you started out on social media, did you have plans for it to grow like this, or did it just kind of take off?
That's a really good question. So Fit2Serve actually years ago, probably about 2015, maybe 2014, I'm out of the military trying to figure out what to do. Always kind of been involved in some type of fitness for most of my life. And so I kind of wanted to start a workout group that was just going to be free to everybody. We just met at the park. We would work out a little bit. It was just kind of a way to get to moving on Saturday, get up, get going. And I called it Fit2Serve, The idea behind that was that we're all, in order to serve, we need to be physically fit. Like, how can we go serve someone without being physically fit to be able to go and do that, And so that lasted a little while, and then I kind of got away from it, got into doing other things. I had a job, this and that, and then in at the end of 2021, start of 2022. I sold some real estate, and I was able to I had some time where I didn't have to work. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to pursue this comedy thing. I've always been passionate about comedy. I started making some funny videos just for fun on TikTok and sharing them on Instagram. And then they kind of started to have traction. They started to have traction on TikTok first. But I just always liked the name Fit2Serve, and I was branding it under that on Instagram. So I made my TikTok name that. And also the kind of what that meant for me changed. It evolved a little bit. And the reason I say that, I was thinking back about it. When I was doing that fitness group, we actually had a lady who was in a wheelchair since birth. I forgot what condition she had, but she was bound by the wheelchair. But she would still come out there and do a little bit, with us and exercise as best as she could. And she just liked being out there. And that's when it hit me. I was like, some of us aren't physically capable of going and serving, but that doesn't mean we can't be of service in some kind of way. So it taught me a lesson in my own little title of the name there. And so Fit2Serve, for me, I believe that we all have a purpose. We got to figure out what that purpose is. And once we're living in that purpose, I think that's when life really becomes something special. I think a lot of times we go through life focused on how we're going to make money and doing this and having a family and doing that, but we're not living in our purpose. So I believe that we're all fit in some kind of way, not necessarily physically fit, but fit, equipped to be of service,
Absolutely. Well, that's a great answer. And you're absolutely right. A colleague of mine, Dr. Dale Bartek, he says, you can help people who are 2 or 3 steps behind you. You don't need to be all the way at the top to help people all the way at the bottom. You can help people just a few steps behind you. And that reminds me, at one of my former gyms, there was a guy, I think he was born with some congenital issues, and he would have to transfer himself from the wheelchair to the bench. And many of the people in the gym would go over and ask him, "Hey, can we help you? Can we spot you?" He was like, "No," he would just push us away.
Yeah.
And I said, "I may be able to lift more weight than you, but you're definitely stronger than me."
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's people like that that I think truly inspire. And tell us a little bit about when you got out of the military, because obviously when you're in the military, you're doing PT most of the time. I know you served in overseas and won a Purple Heart. Um, what took you from being fit to starting to overeat a little?
So whenever I got out of the military, addiction issues have always kind of been prevalent in my family. My father struggled with some stuff that he's currently free of now. Um, some uncles that have had some issues. So during high school, I kind of, started to dabble in things that, most high schoolers do. But I noticed that after high school and into college, it kind of carried over. And then I sort of started to develop an addiction to opiates. And that was even before going into the military. So I struggled with addiction issues prior to that. But then I go to the military and I start, doing the military thing in the infantry, went through special forces selection, was very physically fit and driven and, really enjoyed it. And then in Afghanistan, of course, get injured. We hit an IED. I was really, given the circumstances, very fortunate. I wasn't very seriously injured. I dislocated a tendon in one of my ankles, had some bumps and bruises from hitting the IED, but we were in a big armored truck, so that helped. But from that, it led to them back putting me on some opiates, and then boom, I take off again. It's something I couldn't turn off. So I start right back into this addiction for opiates. So by the time I get out of the Army, I leave there with a pretty good addiction to opiates again. And of course, when you get out of the military, you don't have your health insurance that you had in the military and all that again. So you leave and kind of have to go doctor shopping, and it takes about a year to get plugged into the VA. And, so I'll just leave with this bad opiate addiction and struggled with that on and off for years, all the way up until 2021. But I ended up going to a treatment center. It was a 3-month treatment center, and it saved my life. I mean, turned things around for me. I got, was able to had enough time. 3 months is a good time to get off the opiates. I was able to work on a lot of things. So I came out of there, and living sober, I found that I started to find comfort in food because I didn't have the pills that I could go to anymore. I didn't have, and so I start finding some comfort in food. And really, it struck me even recently. I was talking on another podcast about how I really got a taste of how food can be a drug. And so you see these people that overeat, and sometimes we don't understand it. And I used to not even understand it until I kind of went through a little bit of it. And I didn't go through it to the extent that some people do, but I can just remember like, oh, I've, been working all day, had a long day, get a little notification on my phone from DoorDash. Oh, there's 10% off at Pizza Hut tonight, and you get a little bit of that euphoric, like, ooh, pizza set. And that felt like a little bit of, So anyways, that kind of led to that. And my thing was, man, I was okay, because as long as I wasn't abusing opiates and all that stuff again, the overeating I wasn't even thinking about it. I just wanted to remain drug free and, keep going and pushing. I was getting so much better, mentally healthy for the first time in a long time. So I wasn't even concerned about the physical health, but that led for me to a passion to get back in shape, because now I'm at a place where I'm actually enjoying life and loving life and wanting to experience life. And so I've learned through that, hey, now I've got to do some things physically so I can enjoy it even better.
Well, congrats on your recovery. My buddy owns 3 pain management clinics, and I've done consulting for them. I know how difficult it is to get off of opioids. Yeah. And so kudos to you. And to your point, the listeners know this and viewers know this, but when you have brain chemical imbalance, whether it's low dopamine, low serotonin, some people it will manifest as gambling. Some people it will manifest as recreational drug use or prescription drug use. Other people it's going to manifest as overeating. And it's really all the same mechanism. It just manifests slightly differently. We just happen to kind of stigmatize people who turns to recreational drugs. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a patient 3.5, 4 years ago. Both of his parents are pharmacists, and they had sent him to all these retreat type wilderness things to help him detox. And he wasn't getting better. He was addicted to black tar heroin and Oxycontin, I think. So one thing that I treat a lot and help people with is mold toxicity. And that causes major inflammation in the brain. And the only way you can experience any semblance of normalcy is to either drink or use opioids or strong drugs like heroin. And so we detoxified the mold from his body and we remediated his condo, no longer an addict.
Wow.
And so kudos to you for that. I know that's not easy. You're going off of one substance, going to another. Did you have a support system in place that was helping you with your recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a good family environment, I mean, like that's always, we've always kind of had each other's backs, like going through what my dad went through. We were there, he ends up going to treatment in his 40s, so I was 15, 16, 17 years old. My brother, who's about 18 months older than me, going through it too. So got to kind of see him overcome some things. And so when it came time for me to need some help, we kind of, for the most part, knew what needed to happen,
Right.
in terms of just like getting you to treatment faster. But I had some friends too that I'd built. When I first got sober, I kind of dabbled in the AA community, which I love. I mean, I think that they've really got something going on there. I'm not as active there now because my thing honestly was just opiates. I really haven't struggled with alcohol issues or anything. It's just really been the opiates. And so a lot of times in the AA circles, which is fine, they believe in complete abstinence from everything for the most part. And I can understand how that can definitely play a role. It's just not my story. But because I had those, connections built from that, I had a little bit, I knew who to call and I knew who to reach out to, and they knew what to do. And it really was super helpful to have that network.
Well, that's awesome. And so I know you said you started posting videos on TikTok, and then did you start having different brands reach out to you to collaborate, whether it's a fitness company, an ice barrel company, a pickleball company?
Yeah, so I didn't know how any of this worked, man. I just knew that I enjoyed bringing humor to people's days. And I knew that if you grew a following, a genuine, organic following, and I say that because, there's plenty of people out there buying followers in order to beef their account up. And it looks like they have all these followers, but they don't, and they're not making any money at it. But if you grow a real organic, actual human being following, I knew that some opportunities could come from that. But my intentions originally weren't really to do that. It really just was to see if I could be successful making people laugh and making some viral videos, and I did. It wasn't until the pickleball stuff that, because pickleball obviously, sports back around again, taking off, it's a good time to be involved in it. I wasn't aware of how well it was doing and how big it was becoming when I started making some comedy videos around it. I was just picking topics for my comedy videos that were things that I were involved in at the time, and one of those was pickleball. So after one of those videos did really well, kind of went viral on both platforms, Instagram and TikTok, I started having some folks reach out. And one of them, the first one, was a blog site that was getting started for pickleball news and all that. And they reached out and wanted to pay me to make some videos for them at the end of 2022. And I did. And then after that, it was like the floodgates were opened. It showed me how to start making money at this. It kind of taught me what to start charging and all that kind of stuff. And as people would reach out, I would just have those conversations with them. And it led to the fitness side doing the same thing with the CrossFit humor. So it's been a process. I didn't, but you kind of learn as you go, for sure.
So did you start working out at a CrossFit gym locally, and then you gained kind of national attention, or how did that work?
Man, I do a lot of these, and I still do them. Your friend that, and then fill in the blank, right? Your friend that just started running, your friend that just started CrossFit. And so I did that. And I kind of had picked that topic based on a couple things. One, I was interested in getting into CrossFit at the time. I wasn't doing it whenever I first made the video. My brother had started doing it though. He lives in Nashville. He calls, hey man, I started CrossFit, and he starts telling me about all this, and so it kind of hit me. I was like, man, I'm gonna do your friend that just started CrossFit, and I knew enough about it, especially when I was in the military. A lot of guys were doing it then, so I knew enough about it to kind of do a sketch comedy video around it. And of course, it does well and takes off, but that led me to, start getting into CrossFit and working out and some CrossFit stuff. And then because a lot of the CrossFit content became popular, I start working with brands that are in the CrossFit space, RX Smart Gear, Ice Barrel, end up going to the CrossFit games, to do some work out there. So it just kind of continued to grow as I continued to make the videos.
That's awesome. And is that part of your fitness regimen today?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've been trying to get better at is consistency, and that's been my goal for 2024. Now, I'll say, and I know you mentioned Josh and Katie earlier, love them, do some work with Blokes, and Blokes, since I started Blokes in late October, I've lost over 20 pounds. So I'm about 23 pounds down now in January.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's from the semaglutide and the testosterone, getting the testosterone levels raised and all that good stuff. And that has jump started for me a motivation to, not only get back into the gym, but start watching what I eat and because once I start seeing the weight come off on the scale, it's like, okay, we got some actual progress going here. I'm feeling better. But consistency's been my thing. I've always been into weightlifting, so I do that pretty regularly. I can be consistent at weightlifting, but I'll hit a CrossFit workout once or twice a week right now. And I want to up those numbers, especially moving to Nashville, find a place I could do maybe 3 to 4, but I love weightlifting so much. So as that weight continues to fall off, I think I'll get more involved in the CrossFit side of things.
Yeah, I think CrossFit does an amazing job at providing that sense of community where everyone's cheering everyone else on. And it's not just, okay, I'm jealous of this person. He benches more than me. By the way, I saw you repping out with Dr. Jace. I think it's 325 or something.
So my max right now is 365. What's amazing though is you get Dr. JC on the bench, and I think he hit 415 that day like it was nothing.
Yeah, definitely a strong dude. But you brought up a great point that a lot of people, even doctors that I lecture to, don't know, and that's that opiates lower testosterone.
Yeah.
So when you go to come off of them, not only do you have the rise in glutamate, which is excitotoxic to the brain, but you have the lowered testosterone, which negatively impacts mood. And so I think a lot of people associate testosterone, big muscles, and yeah, that plays a role in that area. But I would say heart health, brain health, sleep, anti-inflammatory, all of those things and energy are just as important, if not more important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, I kind of knew some of that going into it. I knew how beneficial it was to have those levels optimized. And whenever I found out my testosterone after the first initial blood test that you do for blokes before they even prescribe you any kind of treatment, my testosterone was 141. So if you know, obviously about the numbers, it's, they said they want you ideally, 800 to 900 range, 800, 900, to kind of be fully optimized. So I was like, dang, dude, I mean, I had next to none, going on. And so, but just in 45 days from the testosterone replacement therapy, I think I was at 550 something in 45 days. So already feeling way better.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, the studies show when your levels go below 550 nanograms per deciliter, your risk of all-cause mortality, so dying from anything, goes way up. And those numbers are calculated based on, the average person out there. But the average person is not feeling well, and testosterone's been declining for the past 40 plus, maybe 50 years. And someone who's even at the bottom of the range, which is 250, you're going to be depressed. You may even be suicidal. But if you're up around 750, 800, 900, as long as your total and free testosterone are good, you're going to have a good mood, a good attitude. You're going to be resilient to stress. Your body composition is going to be better. And it's kind of a vicious cycle because it's like you said, if your testosterone's low, you go work out, even if you're consistent, you don't see results. So then you're like, why am I even doing this? And you think that you're failing, even though you have something going on that's not in your control, really.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was cool to see. I was nervous about doing the blood test, the initial blood test, because I was like, man, there's no telling what they're gonna find. It's gonna be bad. But getting over that hump and then actually having looked at it, I remember feeling relief, going, okay, well, at least we know, what needs to change, and we can actually address it now, and we can do something about it.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on a few of your videos that I happen to love. One was with George Kittle, the tight end from the 49ers. What was it like meeting him? And is your 40 still pretty much faster than his?
Man, nowhere near it. He's he was really cool. I had a really good opportunity that was done there in Nashville. He puts on something called Tight End University every year during the summer. It's actually George Kittle, Greg Olson, and Travis Kelce's event. And they just invite all the NFL tight ends out to train together and hang out. And it's really cool. I mean, he creates a really cool environment. There's a lot of social events in the evening. I think they even do a golf outing one of the days. So it's just a lot of fun, and they'll have quarterbacks come in. I think Josh Allen came in and threw some passes to him. Rob Gronkowski was there hanging out. It was such a cool event, and I was able to do that through Chubby's Clothing because they're a big sponsor of Tight End University, and they work with George Kittle. So George Kittle and Chubby's, he's got his own line of clothing with Chubby's, which is pretty cool. So it was cool. Chubby's invited me out. I think the only social media influencer that was invited from Chubby. So it was a really unique opportunity. But man, they were a lot of fun, super kind, just genuine dudes to hang out with. We got to, go to a lot of the after parties and be there and stuff. And then just watching them train on the field, to see it in person gives you a lot more appreciation for what these guys do on Sundays.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of them with head injuries, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that can lead to opioid dependence, and then that can lead to low testosterone, or just the brain impacts themselves can lead to low testosterone. And so I think what you're doing speaks to a much broader audience than just the average person. And, when I've watched documentaries on addiction, like many people think that, you're homeless living on the street.
Yeah.
There were judges, there were politicians, there were physicians, accountants, architects, school teachers, all pulling up to this neighborhood outside of Philadelphia to buy their heroin.
Yeah.
And one lady said, literally, all I did is I had some dental work done, and I was prescribed, I think, 3 days worth of oxycodone, and then she was hooked.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, I remember the first time I experienced opiates, it was through, or real strong opiates. It was through Oxycontin back whenever that was still. Now that I think they actually got away, or got rid of that actual drug, OCs. Everybody remember talking about OCs, but there's still the same thing out there in different forms. It's just oxycodone with no acetaminophen in it, right? So once I first really started into something strong like that, I can remember that feeling like, man, I want to do this. I want to feel this way every day for the rest of my life. Like this feels amazing, until it ruins your life. But, to your point, like you go to some of these AA, NA, CA meetings and just listen to people's stories. And it's like you're saying, the homeless guy, or at least in most areas, the homeless guy that, is living under the bridge, you probably will never see one of them very few of them at an AA meeting that are actually sharing and there to get help. It's like a lot of these people you're talking about, CEOs, people that own their own businesses, very successful people. So it can affect anybody. And I saw it firsthand,
Absolutely. Well, tell us about your workouts outside of CrossFit. I know you had some lady admirers. I think Janet and Rhonda were pretty much following you around the gym. Can
Yeah,
you touch
man.
on that?
Yeah, I always love making these I like this genre of comedic thirst trap. I kind of got into that with TikTok, and I was doing the single mom next door video, where I would just basically put on some short shorts, take my shirt off, act like I was working in the yard, play the right music, slow the video down a little bit. And that's kind of what started the TikTok process for me. And then just kind of carrying that same scenario over into different gym scenes and stuff like that has been a blast. But man, my workouts like on an everyday, like I literally love just going to the gym and doing an old school weightlifting style workout. I mean, chest on Mondays, right? Back and buys on Tuesdays, Wednesdays legs, Thursdays shoulders. That's kind of how I've always lifted. And that's when I say like getting back and getting consistent at it, that's the style of exercise that I think that I enjoy the most. So starting to kind of do that again has helped me to get more consistent, at least about going to the gym.
Absolutely. And what would you say? I know you're doing a lot of traveling and collaboration with different brands. What's the most unique opportunity you've gotten so far with your social media influencer?
Gosh, I would definitely rank Tight End University right there at the top. I mean, the people that I've met there, I mean, Theo Vaughn, getting to see him and hang out with him for a minute, Rob Gronkowski, all these different big names. It was a really cool experience, but I'd also rank right up there. The CrossFit Games were a lot of fun. That was my first time going to something like that, especially CrossFit related. And then to see the audience that I have there was really impressive because you just don't know. I mean, yeah, you watch the videos, you see people comment, and obviously you know that you've got a crowd and an audience for what you're putting out there. But then to go to an event and then have people recognize you and want to meet you and tell you how much they enjoy your videos or how your comedies help them to get back to the gym or all this kind of stuff really made it feel more real, made it feel more personal, and it gives you that motivation to keep on going. So it's been that way for me with the pickleball space as well. But yeah, I would rank it Tight End University and then probably CrossFit Games for sure.
Yeah, I've shared your videos, especially the one where you're doing the CrossFit workout and you're getting all chalked up, and the
Yeah.
coach catches you with the chalk like across your mustache. I shared that with the biohacker babes, Lauren and Renee, Molly Eastman from Sleep is a Skill, and now I see them liking your stuff. And
Oh,
so,
good.
yeah, so I mean, they all think it's hilarious. They see the value in it, but then when you have your serious videos, because for a while all I saw was funny, 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 and then
Yeah.
I came across a serious video where you were discussing Fit2Serve, and I'm like, that's really insightful. Like he's not
Yeah.
just a huge jokester, prankster. Like there's really some insight here.
Right. And that's a big part of it for me. I wanted to sprinkle that in. Like, obviously, comedy is my thing. My goal, and when I talked about Fit2Serve earlier and finding that purpose and how we can serve, that's how I think I serve is through comedy, right? Like trying to bring some humor to your day. And I get so many messages, just overwhelmed with the amount of people that are just like, man, I was having a bad day, brought up one of your videos, and it's really helped, So that definitely helps me to keep on going for sure. But I wanted to sprinkle in some of that seriousness because I think there is, you get this audience and you get people watching the videos and listening and stuff like that. And the whole purpose is to try to kind of have a positive message for, behind the page and to help motivate, not only through comedy and humor, but also just to relate and say, hey, this is what, this is what I'm going through. This is what I deal with. This is what, it's not just all fun and games. There is a real side to it. And the other thing was like people that, when you get on Instagram and all that stuff and you see search fitness, right? You're going to pull up just a bunch of just gorgeous people with perfect bodies. And so for the average person that's like, hey, I'm trying to get back in shape, I'm trying to exercise again, I'm trying to go back to the gym, let me just look at some things on Instagram, find a good page and you see all this intimidating stuff. I think sometimes it can be overwhelming for the new person, and they'll say, man, if this is what's going to be at the gym, I don't want to go. I look like crap. I don't look anywhere near this good. I can't do that. I can't do that exercise. I'm not going to look this way. I'm not going to, and then they just talk themselves out of getting started. So my goal
Right.
was to bring a new side of it and say, hey, this is what fitness also looks like. This is what fitness also is for. And it's probably for a larger majority of people, because I think more people in the United States, at least, are out of shape than they are in shape. So
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit to them. Let's make something for them.
absolutely. I think we have to meet people where they are. I saw a little chart or graph yesterday that said by 2030, 50% of Americans will be classified as obese. And so
Mhm.
I think, we need a better sense of community, because a lot of times people feel like they're alone. And it really frustrates me when I hear someone making fun of someone who's obese, but they're starting maybe with just walking around the block.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're making fun of them. You're sitting on the couch. Like, at least
Yeah.
they're making an effort and they're making progress and they're showing up every day despite their struggles. And I think, if we could have more community based type workouts, like my buddy from Self Decode, Joe Cohen, he's in Israel. And he said about 80% of the population works out at a local outdoor fitness center, kind of like Venice Beach in
Yeah.
Israel. And so, they're there to support each other. And I think a lot of times we go to the gym, we may not even talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And I think, that lack of support is leading to a lot of frustration and lack of results, as crazy as it may sound.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's like your example of the obese person getting up and walking around. Like, do you know how hard that is for that person to have done that? Like, that was the other thing too, I've realized, and I've kind of been happy. Well, happy, I mean, it's been a good experience for myself getting out of shape, because I used to be one of those people, because I've been in shape most of my life. I did some personal training, in the army, all this different stuff. I've run half marathon distances before. Like, I've been in shape, really good shape. And I used to be one of the people that would sit back and see someone super out of shape and just not be able to understand why they would let themselves get that way. And I think that's a lot of people that are in the fitness community. Not saying they're doing it in a bad way or a judgmental way. I just don't think they can understand it, because they know
Right.
how good it feels to be in shape and to be optimized and to be healthy. They know how good that feels. So when they see someone who's just the complete opposite way, they don't understand it. And I was kind of that way until I got super out of shape. And it gave me an appreciation for how hard it is to to be extremely overweight, to be obese, to be really out of shape, and then have to try and start that journey back to losing 90 pounds, 100 pounds or more. Like, it's a lot, it's a lot. You
Absolutely.
have no energy. It's easy, so it's given me a big appreciation for that.
Well, that's awesome. Another video I watched of yours that was, well, they're all hilarious, but this one was talking about your time on Fort Benning and a guy named Lou Avasa and some wild
Yeah.
hogs. Was Can you tell us if that was true?
Yeah, totally true. Yeah,
It's
100%.
totally true.
Yeah, and it's kind of embarrassing because we were the two. So they pair us up for land nav. Land nav. I'm with my buddy who was my bunkmate in basic, and we get lost on land nav during the day. Land nav. First time we've ever done land navigation like that. You have a compass. This isn't a GPS. It's a compass, a protractor, and a paper map, right? And then this vast landscape at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the middle of the woods. So we get lost. We run into Lou Avasa and his partner, and they're lost. And we were lost, and it went from dayland nav, and then it gets dark, and it turns into nightland nav, because it was supposed to be two exercises. It was supposed to be dayland nav, find your points, come back to base camp, eat lunch, get ready for nightland nav. Like, have a class, then go do nightland nav. But we're out there and it's dark now. We're still on the dayland nav exercise. And they had warned us about the hogs out there prior to going. And we thought that they were messing with us at first. And then we started to hear them in the woods, and they're all over the place. I mean, they're out there everywhere. And they were like, don't mess with them. Don't get. And so it's nighttime. We find this dirt road. We're walking down the dirt road. We hear animals moving alongside us, like literally felt like they were stalking us. I mean, they would follow right along with us. You could hear them easily in the thing, and then you could see them cross the road in front of us. So we saw, okay, those are the hogs right there they were talking about. So we had found this old classroom that they used to do instructional stuff out. This place's training facility is huge. It's big, tons of acreage. And so we go in there, and there's a chair, and Luavasa has this log he found, and they're like, all right, guys, we're going to walk down this dirt road until it leads to wherever it's going, and we can find some help. If we see the hogs, we'll put the chair down. We'll all stand on the chair, and Luavasa will hit the hogs with the with the log, right? So we're going, and sometimes we'd stop, and get ready to put the chair down because we think they're coming out. But we make it all the way to the end of this road, and about that time, that's where we hear drill sergeants yelling for us, and we start yelling back, and then out of nowhere, out of the woods in front of us, one of our drill sergeants, completely soaking wet, and it's cold outside, completely soaking wet, comes popping out furious. And let's just say it was a bad walk back to base camp and a bad rest of the night. And then, of course, the rest of the training companies out there just dying laughing whenever we're the 4 ones that come in that couldn't find the land nav points.
That's some funny stuff. So how many years total were you in the Army?
About 4.5.
4.5. Gotcha. And do you miss some aspects of it?
Yeah, definitely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It became a struggle whenever I got back from Afghanistan and started on the opiates again, and couldn't really, it just took me down a road where I was like, all right, it's time to get out. But leading up to that and everything, I loved it. I was in my early 20s, in really good shape, single guy, no family, no kids, or, not married, no kids, which is really the way to do it. I couldn't imagine it'd be so much tougher having a wife and kid back home when you're trying to do this. But so I loved it, man. I was, free to travel wherever, and enjoyed the exercise part of it and the training. And of course, I was in the infantry and did a bunch of cool stuff in a long range surveillance unit. So I really enjoyed it.
So when was the first time someone approached you out in public that you didn't know from in person before? And they said, hey, are you Evan Slaughter? Are you fit to serve?
Well, it actually happened right around the corner from my parents' house. So in Hoover, Alabama, I was just at my parents' house. I was decided to take a walk. I was going to walk to these woods nearby, do a little hike. And this was in 2022, probably fall of 2022. And mind you, I started really getting serious about it spring of 2022. So, maybe 6 months after getting started or so. And having some viral videos take off. I'm just out for a walk, and this guy, probably in his late 20s, a friend of mine stops who's driving a truck. He sees me walking, and we're chatting for a minute, and I see this guy and this girl standing kind of waiting on me. And I was thinking, oh, maybe they need to ask me something, or maybe they lost their dog or something, who knows. And I just I get done, I kind of turn, and they're like, are you fit to serve? And I was like, oh my gosh, my parents aren't going to believe this. But it was cool, and it was neat because they're literally right around the corner, and it's in an area where I shoot a lot of videos. So you can tell that, most of your audience, I think, initially comes from right where you're pushing videos out at, which is kind of neat. So that was cool.
And do you have a film crew that comes and works with you?
Sometimes. So a lot of the times, most of the times it's me, a camera, because I make so much content throughout the week, especially working with different brands, that it doesn't make sense to have that big of a setup for everything. But for some of the bigger sketches where I use other people, I've got a friend that I pay to come and run the camera. And we'll have some extras every now and then that want to be in a video and help out. Or if I'm working like with RX Smart Gear, and they have some sketches that they want to shoot, they'll provide all that camera. Chubby's Clothing, I've done a pretty big photo shoot deal for their fall fashion line this past year, and it was a whole production with makeup and, a production team and cameras. And so I've done a wide range of things, but when it's me shooting videos for my weekly stuff, it's usually just me and a camera.
So for people who are listening and watching, who may be just starting their fitness journey, or someone who may be struggling with addiction issues, what would your message to them be?
So my message would be, you got to get honest, and you got to get honest with yourself and with other people. That was the hardest thing for me to do for the majority of my life, was be honest. I was very good at manipulating situations, so much that even I would believe them, right? And I know that sounds weird. You hear people say that and you think, well, I think he's just using that as an expression. It's like, no, I think I really lied to myself so much that I believed that this was true, that I'm not doing as bad as everyone else seems to think I am, or I'm not, so getting honest was a big part of the recovery aspect to me. If I can be honest with myself and with other people about anything, then I feel like I feel like I've got a better chance at this thing. So like whenever I was lying about stuff, all I was doing was prolonging the inevitable. It was eventually going to come out. It was eventually going to get bad. So once I was able to get honest, so like someone struggling right now, be honest with yourself.
Right.
Are you at a place where you need some help? And if you do, you gotta reach out, as hard as it is to do. Because I was always fearful of what people were going to think of me, or getting in trouble when I was young, or what my family would think. I always wanted to appear that everything was going good. And now looking back, that was such a waste of time. I could have prevented so much headache if I just could have called and said, hey, I'm not doing great. I can't get off these opiates. I really need some help. Can you guys help me to get some help? Man, I would have saved myself so much trouble.
Absolutely. And when you returned from rehab, did you have trouble? They tell you to change your environment, to change your friends. Was that something that you had to do?
I've heard that stuff a lot, and I think it definitely plays a role. If you live in an area where your next door neighbor was your drug dealer, yeah, you might need to find somewhere else to go. Or if what I did whenever I first got out was I was fortunate to be able to go back to my parents' house. So I sold the house I was in. I had just gone through a divorce, so I didn't want to come out and go home to the house where a lot of just bad memories were. Um, so I just asked them, I was like, can I stay with y'all for a little, that way I've got some accountability. I've got, people that truly care about me in my life, and I'm going to an environment where it wasn't just a bunch of bad memories as soon as I left. So I was, made that decision, and I think it was the best decision I could have made. So there's definitely a role in that. You got to get yourself in a healthy situation. A lot of guys come out of rehab, especially a 3-month rehab like that, and they go to a sober living environment where they're being drug tested, and which is good and bad, because you still get people that are going to use drugs in those sober living environments, and you're around people that aren't really there to be serious. They're just trying to avoid trouble. So it's got its, benefits and its hiccups to it. But for me, I was like, I knew that I needed just to return home, go to my parents' house for a little bit, get things figured out. I sold the real estate that I had, so I was able to pay off all my debts and have some money in the bank. And then that also took the pressure off when I started to pursue the comedy stuff a little bit. So yeah, I would say that plays a big role. But the other thing is, like, you also got to do the deal. Like, if you really want to be sober, you're going to do things in order that are going to help that. You're going to go to the AA meetings if you need to. You're going to, call your sponsor if you need to be doing that. You're going to start exercising if that's something that's, you're going to do the things that are going to keep you sober.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I know the message that I kind of take away, and something I've believed for a long time, is that you don't have to be uber serious in a suit and tie and very rigid to be productive and to accomplish things and move forward in life. You can have fun. None of us are getting out of this thing alive, so we may as well laugh it off. But you are honest with yourself. You're vulnerable, which I think there's incredible strength in vulnerability. So thank you for being the inspiration that you are, and being so dang funny. I don't need to pay for comedy shows and pay-per-view anymore. I'll just go to your Instagram page.
Man, I appreciate it, Dr. Tim, for sure.
All right. Have a blessed day and keep up the great work, buddy.
All right, man. You as well.